It's not just about the manger where the baby.
Welcome to the Muddy Preacher. Getting ready to take a journey here at Christmas time, like many of us. Much like that first Christmas with Mary and Joseph on their way down to Bethlehem from Nazareth. Speaking of that, there's actually a lot of the cross involved in that journey. We might not think of it, but that journey has a lot of symbolism rolled up in it. It goes all the way back to an Old Testament prophecy that says the Messiah will be born in the house of David. And then Caesar Augustus, if any of us have read the story of the second chapter of Luke, knows Caesar Augustus declared a census to be taken, and everyone must go to his house of the town of his ancestry. And that meant Joseph, who was pledged to be married to Mary, who is pregnant with our Messiah, would have to travel from Nazareth to Bethlehem to register to pay his tax, because that's what a census was all about after all. So, come with me on this journey, and we'll talk about this. So this journey from Nazareth to Bethlehem was actually a journey of about 100 miles, or 160 kilometers, over rough terrain. And they didn't have a nice Jeep Cherokee or Jeep Wrangler to do it in. At best, they would have had a donkey or a mule. Otherwise, Joseph would have had to have walked, and Mary would have had to have walked much of it, or maybe ridden on the animal some. And like I said, this was about going to Bethlehem to pay a tax, and everyone in the kingdom of Judea would have had to have gone to pay the tax. And if you didn't pay your tax, well, it wasn't like the IRS showed up with some auditors and bean counters to check. They showed up with soldiers and swords, and they didn't take no for an answer. Sometimes they took your kids, they took your land, they took your animals, they took your life. This wasn't something to fool with. So Joseph made it down to Bethlehem, and the city was crowded. And as the story goes, as we know, there was no room for them. And so they went to a shepherding pen, or a stable, or a cave. And the time had come for Jesus to be born. And Mary gave birth to a son, and they named him Emmanuel. God is with them. God is with us. Jesus. And actually, to talk about that today. Bethlehem. Jesus being born in Bethlehem. Because Bethlehem actually translates to house of bread. And that is where the cross comes into play. Because see, Jesus, he talked about himself being the bread of life. And after the feeding of the 5,000, he said, if you do not eat of my flesh or drink of my blood, you have no part in my ministry, or no part in eternal life. And my flesh is real food, and my blood is real drink. And many people turned away from his ministry at this. This was a hard teaching, they said. But in the Last Supper, Jesus stood up among the 12, well, the 11, and he held up matzah, the bread of the Passover, which has little holes poked in it because it's pierced, and it is unleavened. Leavening meaning hypocrisy and sin. So it is bread that is pierced and has no hypocrisy or sin. And matzah translates to what's this? So Jesus is born in a town, house of bread. And matzah translates to what's this? Well, Jesus stands up, holds up the matzah, which means what's this? And Jesus says what? He says, this is my body broken for you. So God placed the Last Supper at the first Passover by naming the bread matzah. So if we think about it, God placed his Messiah to be born in the house of bread as a arrow pointing straight to the Last Supper, which is straight to the cross. Christmas is about the cross. Jesus came to go to the cross. We need to celebrate Christmas because it celebrates the cross. Now, our next message is going to be about the shepherds. Don't miss that one. That one is going to be very interesting. And I promise you, you'll learn something about Jesus and the cross and the Passover. Maybe even more so than you learned today when it comes to those shepherds. So, we're coming up here on our turn. So, until next time, from the Muddy Preacher, Merry Christmas and God bless.